Saturday night, and that was it.
Chair Kelly, I didn't get anything in my rain gauge, not a single drop. Well, maybe a drop or two, but it didn't register. So, um, Casey let me know that I'll be using my own, controlling my own destiny here. So hopefully we're all along for the bumpy ride that it could be. It's likely no surprise that conditions this spring have not been typical. Irrigation season started with below average snowpack, and sustained above average temperatures have rapidly accelerated the snowmelt. March was the warmest on record, which significantly contributed to that early snowmelt. Snowpack across all basins relevant to Middle Valley water supply. That is the wrong button. Nope. Am I
Hey,
doing it right? You're just gonna do it. I'm sorry. I tried. Um, I'm facing the wrong way. That one. Okay. Um, Snowpack across all subbasins relevant to Middle Valley supply. In all of them, the most we see right now is 13% of what we typically see this time of year. So the snowpack's pretty much all but gone. I have a hydrograph from the NRCS Cumbres Trestle Snowtell site, and that's on the Colorado-New Mexico state line. It's currently reporting about 0.5 inches of snow water equivalent, and that's compared to a median of about 24 inches for the state. As you can see, we're in uncharted territory. That red line is that historically lowest observed snowpack condition at this site on each date. And a couple weeks ago, we dipped down below it because of those high temperatures, and we're in uncharted territory. This is the lowest we've ever seen at this particular site at this date. And this is pretty consistent across most of the snowtell sites within the basin. There are a couple, like the Taos snowtell site still has some snowpack up in it, but for the most part, the snow's pretty gone. Flows at the ODWE gauge are currently below 600 cubic feet per second and falling. Average flows for this time of year are closer to 1,300 cubic feet per second, and we'd usually see flows increasing. Today's release from the Cochiti is about 480 cubic feet per second. About 50 of that is the Water Authority San Juan Chama water, which leaves 430 CFS available for Middle Valley users. Agricultural and conveyance demand today is about 600 cubic feet per second, so that leaves about 170 CFS supply deficit today. River conditions reflect this shortage. Initial channel drying occurred on March 25th, which is significantly earlier than average. In typical years, initial drying occurs in late May or in June. At present, more than 31 miles of the Santa Coscia Reach are dry, and drying in the Isleta Reach is imminent. At these low flows, river conditions are highly unstable. We see some flow fluctuations observed in the hydrograph up here of the ODWE gauge. We've been seeing them since late March, and they're likely driven by irrigation activity on the Chama and the Rio Grande north of ODWE. These fluctuations, they complicate the Army Corps of Engineers operation of Cochiti Reservoir, and it compromises my ability to accurately forecast their operations at that dam from day to day. There's additional instability in the river from the Water Authority operations. Their surface water diversion south of the Alameda Bridge isn't consistently diverting throughout the day. And with that instability comes fluctuations their surface water diversion south of the Alameda Bridge isn't diverting consistently throughout the day. And when that instability combines with the fluctuations from their surface water treatment facility, at the north of Isleta diversion dam, it creates inflow into the dam that varies wildly from day to day or throughout the day. And these fluctuations from the authorities' diversions, they're observable at the USGS central gauge right here. You can see there's daily fluctuations there. And Mr. Martinez is going to discuss a little bit more about how those fluctuations are impacting him and his team south of Albuquerque. Due to Rio Grande compact restrictions and current hydrologic conditions, the district will not be able to store any native Rio Grande water for Middle Valley use this year. The only storage water available will be the 2026 San Juan Chama allocation, along with a small San Juan Chama allocation left over from November. It was allocated to us last November. Based on the April 1 NRCS forecast, the district is expected to receive about a 40% of a full San Juan Chama allocation this year. So that'd be about 8,000 acre feet. But talking to Bureau staff, they actually think that number is probably going to be closer to 30%. This is a graphic of how those allocations are made. We receive San Juan Chama allocations monthly on the 15th of each month. The allocation is based on the previous months, how much the project has produced in the previous month. So we are forecasted to get an allocation on April 15th, which is in 2 days. And I do know that that allocation is going to be about 2,000 acre feet. And then over the next couple months, we're anticipated to get another about 6,000 acre feet. If the district were to wait until the full allocation is received in that June 15th, the total volume would support a release of about 400 CFS for 10 days. So it's not a ton of water. It's not going to augment river flows for too long. And even if we did delay that release until June 15th, that would likely coincide with an already very dry river, and releasing that water at that time would be really an inefficient use of that water. And it would be challenging to release that water in a way that all MRGCD irrigators could benefit from the release. So the way we're basically managing our San Juan Chama allocation is akin to living paycheck to paycheck. MRGCD has, in some instances, even borrowed against our future allocations from willing partners to sustain these releases. So for these reasons, I recommend returning to the district's pre-2020 practice of reserving the current year's San Juan Chama allocation for use in the following irrigation season. This approach provides greater certainty in available supply and allows the MRGCD to have a meaningful amount of water for release when it is needed. However, to return to this practice, it will mean no MRGCD San Juan Chama releases for the irrigation season for irrigation in 2026. Looking ahead, the National Weather Service weekly forecast shows near average temperatures with the potential for a mild freeze this weekend. I don't know if you guys saw that in the forecast, but maybe some freezing. And some chances for precipitation tonight and into tomorrow. The seasonal outlook continues to indicate the basin will likely experience above average temperatures through June and below average precipitation, at least in the northern parts of the basin. Looking to the summer seasonal outlook, temperatures are expected to still persist above average, but there's chances that we have pretty good chances of above average precipitation this summer. So we'll take the good news where we can get it, right? So in summary, the water supply to the Middle Valley is already insufficient to meet current irrigation demand. The district will not have the ability to store native Rio Grande water, and supplemental supply options are limited. Irrigators should prepare for a more challenging water supply year than in 2025. And I just, as always, encourage everyone to pray for rain.
Mr. Chairman, before we transition to questions, Anne, can you go back to your San Juan Chama bar graph, please?
Yes.
Just for clarification, this allocation is the full San Juan Chama project.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. I'm sorry, Chair.
So I just don't want anybody to look at the left side of the graph thinking, well, you said 2,500 acre feet, and that's measured in 10,000 acre feet blocks. So the second piece, and I think Mr. Chair my expectations will probably answer questions that you guys may have about San Juan Chama. But before we do that, Anne, can you go back to the USGS gauge that shows the fluctuation in the river? So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Anne's very gracious often, and the time about my conversation about putting this specific graph in there is to really show the expertise that's going on to try to balance the system as much as possible. If you see how many times those things are going up and down, and really, if you look at Anne's job as she's coordinating the Valley with our larger partners, trying to deliver and make decisions and influence decisions that ultimately, and you'll hear from Matt Martinez too, and about what this means at our diversions and the amount of conversations that are going on. And so I point to how bad the hydrology is, because if we were rolling with 1,000 CFS out of Kochi right now, what you're seeing in here won't matter. And so it's another item that we need to log, that when we get to these flows that we're talking about, we are in April and we're talking about a flow rate of around 480 cubic feet per second. I cannot understate, this is middle of the summer water season. And so we're experiencing the struggle of managing through the hottest time of the year in April, and we haven't gotten even to July yet. And so what is we're showing on these hydrographs, as these hydrographs barrel down to a downward trajectory, it's going to get worse if it doesn't rain. And so I think I asked Anne to put this in here and talk about this because it's a difficult job, and the expertise that we have some of the best experts on moving water on this river. They go into these circles, they make suggestions. Sometimes their suggestions aren't listened to. And then people come back and go, oh, I guess we should have done that. Hindsight being 2020. But the trying to balance a system for irrigation, as you see it bounce up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, right? You can look at those bounces, but just between April 2nd and April 9th, and then consider the manual diversion changes we have at 4 diversions. And again, Matt will talk about that, but I wanted her specifically to put it up there, and she was so gracious. She even talked about it less, and she didn't complain about how difficult it is to balance the system. So I'll lay that out there for you guys. And I hope this is an opportunity. It's not often that folks like Anne will tout, their skill. And I know it feels really bad, but we are in the hands of a skilled river operations expert. And you really see that in the low years. You don't see it in the high. You don't see it in the grand years. And undoubtedly, what we would be experiencing on the river without her influence into our federal partners and some of the decision making going on there, our situation would be worse. And anyway, so Anne, you're so gracious. Thank you for putting it up there.
Jason, go ahead.
But Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I think it's not very often we get to take this level of a look about what this actual drought season means, and the system is just that bad right now.
Chair Kelly, Mr. Kasuga, I also think that it's worth pointing out that this is one of the gauges that we kind of monitor to see if we have enough water in the system to meet irrigation demand. And in irrigation season, we like to see it around above 400 CFS, and we're in April and it's down to very nearly 200 cubic feet per second. So I think it very much does illustrate how challenging water supply conditions are and how much worse they'll likely get.
Directors, questions for Anne? Director Dunning?
For the water authority, do they operate under a rule where that sort of determines when they will switch to wells?
Chair Kelly, Director Dunning, yes, they do. They have to have a certain flow rate at the central gauge to allow to be able to continue diverting water from the river. And they are actually bypassing some water to maintain the flows at central so they can continue diverting from the surface water supply. But once flows through the Albuquerque Reach start to decline, they will have to switch to their wells.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thanks, Chair Kelly. And yeah, just to reiterate what Jason's saying, thank you so much for your expertise. Thanks for guiding us through these hard times. So just to clarify, you're recommending to the board that we forego releasing San Juan Chama for this season and hold it so that we can have better delivery in the following 2027 irrigation season.
Chair Kelly, Vice Chair Baugh, that is correct. That's my recommendation to the board. The way we currently have been managing the San Juan Chama water is, I think we've had some opportunities to use it well in the past, but I think it's also would be more meaningful to start at the beginning of a year and tell farmers we have this much water to augment supplies this year, and that means potentially up to this many weeks. At this point in time, I'm guessing on our total volume that we'll get for the year and when exactly we'll get it. So I think it's going to make it much easier for water management and even the irrigators, just providing any amount of certainty that we can to them.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as an example, say, had we had a pot of San Juan Chama water stored already from a previous year, even if it was, say, something like 10,000 acre feet, we very well could be, knowing that the year was even going to be bad and or borderline terrible, we could make the decision to say, hey, we have the water now. we have the river conditions set up, we get the biggest bang for our buck for making sure that water does the most good in the valley by releasing right now, right? If we had San Juan Chama water right now, we would be likely augmenting the system because you just heard right now, we're in April, total demand is somewhere over 600 and we're seeing in-stream flow of something like 480. We would be supplementing that to be able to give the ag community some surety why we had it. Because we don't have the water yet, and we're going to accumulate that water in 3 separate blocks, as this system keeps going down and gets drier and drier and drier, if we get that water and we release it into a dry system, its ability to do good at that point in time is diminished because the system has already kind of dried out. And so that's why we're making the recommendation that we're making. The year is going to be that bad. San Juan Chama water of this magnitude released into this year will be a footnote, less than a speed bump on the overall effect of the river. And we can't guarantee it will benefit all the communities that we serve with where we are. And that's the decision we can't, those are the decisions we can't really make and advise on when we're trying to spend that water as we get an allocation in May and then June and then July. And it's a tough one. And normally I would consider this an operational decision, but San Juan Chama water is something that the community knows and recognizes. And so I think the board should be aware of that. And we'll come back and repeat this conversation. But we wanted to get it on your radar, get it in your minds, make sure we get your feedback from that, because that decision's coming as we get our first allocation getting into May and making that decision of do we pull the trigger or do we hold it? But we want to get out ahead of that. We just think operationally where we will be in May, the value of that water is really low and potentially wasted if we release it into a system that's already dried out.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm sorry, I had another note. And so when was our spring runoff with this warm, temperature? When did you see the biggest level in the river? I know, but like the date and maybe like a better understanding of.
Chair Kelly, Vice Chair Baugh, you didn't really see it translate into the Middle Valley because the peak was kind of scraped off by some storage upstream, and then also Colorado came online. But I would say we probably would have seen the peak flows the end of March if there wasn't human influence on the operations.
Because of how warm it was.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's kind of why we're being presented this alternative idea, because of how abnormally warm it was. And then the last thought, a suggestion, and I know we're going to hear from Matt, but right behind you, we have a trustee, Gwen Baldwin. She also sits on the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Utility Water Authority, correct? And so it'd be great to kind of verse her on some really nuances that would be really relevant considering what Jason said, where, yeah, if we're cruising at 1,000 CFS, these little things just roll through, but when it's so low, that's the hard thing to understand. It has such a high impact that can negatively affect our operations. So like more coordination with some of these agencies is kind of the move in harder times. And so I champion that.
Yeah. So Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I think we're telling you that not because like ABCW are trying to serve their constituents too. And they've actually agreed to do some modeling because these kind of water scenarios, nobody's prepared for. And so they have already, we proactively have raised this question to them. They're open to do some modeling to see if their actions under these lower conditions can be modified to even that out. We put it up there, and I put it up there, and I asked Anne to put it up there just because it's uncharted territory, just like that graph in the black. We're managing water in the way that I have no record to go back on. Oftentimes we could go back on a record and look at what folks did in the past. This will be the year that folks do that for us. They will look back and say, what did people do in 2026? Because we're redrawing that line now where nobody's really been. And so we have good partners in ABCWA. They've listened. They're executing the playbook they have now, but they're willing to do some collaborative modeling and trying to look at that playbook can be expanded, just like we're having to expand our playbook.
Thank you.
Director Rusabaka, Director Sandoval. Director Huron, do you have any questions for Ann?
No, Chairman, I do not.
Thank you. Jason, Ann, Our next meeting is May 11th with that allocation coming in on the 15th of May, but you'll know the amount by that meeting. And given the nature of this, it appears you want a board motion and direction from the board as to storing that water. I believe that's what we did back in 2020 when we made the decision to use the current year storage.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, I'll yield to the path you as the board want to take.
Or we can do it by consensus at that meeting. To me, this is operational, whether it's native flow or whether it's San Juan Chama water. But let's discuss that come May 11th.
Yes, sir. Well, it'll be on the agenda.
Great. And thank you, and continue to try to flatten out that curve and raise it.
I'll do my best, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt?